Здравствуйте. Hola. Welcome back to Adventures in Language. I'm your guide, Kaitlyn. In this video, we're answering a big question. Are some languages harder to learn than others? To do this, we're going to take a look at the Foreign Service Institute's language difficulty categories. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a lifelong language learner and teacher, and I have a Ph.D. in linguistics. There is so much to learn about the science behind language learning, and I'm excited to be taking you on this journey with me. Are you ready? Let's get started. So you might be wondering, what is the Foreign Service Institute, and why does it have any business ranking languages? Well, the Foreign Service Institute, or FSI, trains U.S. diplomats for careers in foreign affairs. They currently offer over 800 language courses in over 70 languages around the world. The FSI categorizes languages into 4 categories of difficulty based on how long it takes students to reach, on average, professional working proficiency in a language, which is about equivalent to superior on the ACTFL scale. A quick note, the FSI categorizes 66 languages, but there are over 7,000 languages spoken around the world. So this list is by no means exhaustive. Now, there are some notable exceptions, but it does cover a good breadth of some of the different world language families. All right, now for the moment you've been waiting for. Let's start with the easiest languages. Category 1 languages are the easy languages. They take about 24 weeks to learn. So if you're looking to master a language in about 6 months, you might try one of these. So why are these languages easy? Well, the simplest explanation is probably that these languages are pretty similar to English. Danish, Dutch, Norwegian, and Swedish are all, like English, part of the Germanic language family. They share many aspects of grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation with English, to the point that they might be easy to understand as long as you can understand English. Take a listen.
Het is niet warm in de winter.
Det där är min syster, Anki.
The other languages in this category are Romance languages. English shares many cognates or similar sounding words with these languages. Try listening to the word for family. In Spanish,
Familia.
Italian,
Famiglia.
French,
Famiglia.
Portuguese,
Familia.
and Romanian.
Familje.
Once you have a sense of the sound systems of these languages, you can get pretty far with cognates. And while English speakers may initially find the verb conjugations and grammatical gender in some of these languages a bit intimidating, the grammar is overall relatively similar to English. Among the category 1 languages, French is actually a bit harder to learn and might require an extra month or 2 of study compared to the others. This is possibly due to its more complex pronunciation and spelling. Category 2 includes a small but rather diverse set of languages. German is in this category, which might be surprising as German is, unsurprisingly, a Germanic language, like English. Take a listen.
Hier ist mein Vater.
Sounds pretty similar to English, right? In spite of many similarities, German has some complex grammatical features like case marking, where words change their form depending on the role they play in a sentence, like the subject versus the object. To make things more complicated, case interacts with 3 different grammatical genders in German, as well as number. The other languages in category 2 are quite different from English and for the most part from each other, but they all use the Roman alphabet, like English, and they have relatively simple grammatical and phonological systems. Now let's take a look at category 3, the hard languages. The languages in this category come from a variety of language families. Several use non-Roman writing systems, so in addition to pronunciation and spelling, students have to learn new symbols. Many have complex grammatical patterns. For example, Hebrew interweaves meaning-based roots with grammatical patterns, rather than tacking grammatical information on at the end, like an ed for a past tense or an s for plurals, like we do in English. German, which has 4 cases, has nothing on Hungarian, which has about 20. And Thai has a vast set of classifiers, which are tiny words or affixes that are different for different types of nouns. Some noun types that have classifiers in Thai include small objects, people, rooms. There's actually one clarifier for boats or planes, and then another for cars or vehicles that are not boats or planes. All in all, there are several hundred Thai classifiers. So you can imagine that's a lot for a learner to remember. Several of the Category 3 languages are tonal languages. So what this means is that for a language like Thai, which has lexical tones, words that differ only in tone can have different meanings, just like words that have one vowel difference, like beat or bit in English, have different meanings. Another challenging aspect of Category 3 languages is vocabulary. Many of these languages have very few cognates with English, so learners don't get that head start that comes with learning a language like Spanish or Dutch. All right, friends, we have made it to these super hard languages. Category 4 languages take nearly 4 times as long to learn as the Category 1 languages. So what makes these languages super hard? Well, for starters, all 5 of these languages use non-Roman writing systems that work quite differently from the alphabets used for English and many other European languages. So students learning these languages really need to spend quite some time learning how to read them. In Mandarin and Cantonese, a single character can represent an entire word or part of a word. There are over 50,000 Chinese characters. And while you may be able to consider yourself literate once you know about 2,000 to 3,000 of them, that's still a whole lot more than 26 letters. The Japanese writing system also uses traditional Chinese characters along with 2 other scripts, and it's not uncommon to see sentences written using all 3 at once. To the untrained eye, Korean might look like a character-based writing system, but it consists of letters arranged into blocks and is actually one of the easiest writing systems to learn. However, Korean pronunciation can be tricky. For example, Korean has 3 different versions of voiceless stop consonants. These are the p, t, and k sounds. So the following words
딸, 달, 탈.
all have completely different meanings, even though they probably sound very similar to someone who does not speak Korean. When it comes to spoken languages, Mandarin and Cantonese have complex tonal systems, and Japanese has meaningful variations in pitch. This means that intonation is extremely important for understanding and being understood in these languages, which is not easy for speakers of languages that don't use contrastive tones or pitch. When it comes to grammar, these languages aren't necessarily more difficult than the ones in Category 3, but they do have some features that can be tricky for native speakers of English, like classifiers and particles, tiny words that pack important grammatical information. The cultures that these languages originate from are also very different from Western cultures, and this too is apparent in the languages. Korean and Japanese use honorifics, where the relationship between speakers influences how they speak to each other. In fact, it's common practice in these cultures to ask someone how old they are when you first meet them,
失礼ですが、お年は?
because this helps you determine how to speak to them. What about Arabic? Well, Arabic is written from right to left, and vowels generally appear either as small markings above or below symbols, or are completely omitted and inferred from context. Like Hebrew and other Semitic languages, Arabic also interweaves meaning-based roots and grammatical patterns. When it comes to speaking, many of the sounds of Arabic pose a real challenge to learners. For example, there are several consonants that are pronounced toward the back of the throat, which is difficult to model for learners. You can't show someone how to move the muscles in the back of their throat. Even a phrase as basic as good morning
صباح الخير.
contains 3 very challenging consonants. On top of all this, Arabic has several spoken dialects that can be quite different from each other, so learners need to know which variety of Arabic they should study. And knowing Iraqi Arabic will only get you so far if you're in Morocco. There's also a formal standard dialect of Arabic, modern Standard Arabic, that's used widely throughout the Arabic-speaking world. Proficient Arabic speakers should have a grasp on both the standard and local dialect, as well as when it's appropriate to use each one. This adds another layer of difficulty to learning Arabic. If you're feeling ambitious, you can study any of the super hard languages using the Mango app. We offer several dialects of Arabic and even some specialty courses in these languages. Well, there you have it. Which languages are easier and harder to learn? To recap, the FSI ranks languages into 4 categories of difficulty based on how long it takes US diplomats to learn them. Languages like Spanish and Dutch are pretty easy, whereas Chinese and Arabic could be nearly 4 times as hard. Before I send you on your way, I want to leave you with some caveats. First, the amount of time that it takes to learn any language will vary for different individuals and different contexts. So it might take you more time or less to learn these languages. Second, remember that the FSI's list is far from exhaustive. So what about the rest of the world's languages? There are over 7,000 of them, remember? It's probably safe to say that most languages will probably fall somewhere around category 3, the hard languages. Learning language as an adult is pretty hard, right? But oh so fun and rewarding. Some might be a bit easier, like Afrikaans, which is very similar to Dutch. Other dialects of Chinese, there are hundreds, might be harder, unless you already speak Cantonese or Mandarin. And this notion of language similarity brings me to my last caveat. You've probably noticed throughout this video that a lot of what makes a language hard or easy has to do with how similar it is to English, which is the native language of most US diplomats. Maybe you're wondering, if Turkish is my first language, would Kazakh really be that hard to learn? And the answer to that is, well, probably not. We can compare languages to each other based on the number of words they contain, the complexity of their grammars, and the uniqueness of their sounds. And some will look more difficult than others. But when it comes down to it, the difficulty of a language does depend in part on how similar it is to the languages you already know. In our next Science Behind Language Learning episode, we'll talk about how language similarities and differences influence second language learning. If you like this video and you want to stay tuned for more videos about the science behind language learning, make sure you subscribe to the Mango Languages YouTube channel. Be sure to check out the description for this video for some free materials on the FSI's language category rankings. Thanks for listening. До свидания. LAHgoo.